The immune system is really important part of the AP biology exam, specifically because it deals with, it can be incorporated in cell communication. So the immune system in animals, we had the video before about the plants, now about the animals. They have the non-specific immune system as well as the adaptive acquired immune system. The non-specific is an innate, general, same response to pathogens all the time, present in all animals. The non-specific, we will divide it up to invertebrates. What is characteristics for invertebrates? Like their exoskeleton made out of chitin, the macromolecule. Their low pH, the acidic body fluids and surface area that prevents bacterial or pathogenic infection, different enzymes, and phagocytic cells that protect them from the pathogens in a general way. The other group are going to be the vertebrates with non-specific immune response. The vertebrates also have adaptive or acquired immunity, so they have both of them, but the invertebrates have only non-specific. The vertebrates have their skin that is low in pH, lower than neutral. They have mucous membrane, the skin basically that covers the inner part of the body, all of the hollow organs, microbiota that lives on our skin and with us inside of our body, hair, cilia, and different secretions like earwax and tears are all contain antimicrobial material. These are all the external barriers that protect us from pathogens. But what happens if pathogens will cross those barriers? And we are still talking about non-specific immune system. So we have in our body some special cells like the NK cells, the natural killer cells. They release chemicals to kill other cells, as well as the phagocytes that they eat non-self particles. They are the neutrophils and the macrophages. Another non-specific immunity is in the chemicals, like the interferon. It's secreted by cells that are infected by virus. And the other chemicals are the complement system. This is a bunch of chemicals work together with other defense mechanisms, and they complement the other immunity, the non-specific as well as specific. And the last one is, when the pathogen comes and still non-specific, is the inflammatory response, the inflammation. Let's get the scenario like we have the skin and there is a thorn that penetrates the skin, so the external barrier is going to be not intact anymore. So here's the blood vessels. Now these are the cells around the thorn, and the bottom is the blood vessels. Those so number one step is the damaged cells that the thorn damaged around, they start to release chemicals. And these chemicals are going to activate mast cells. This is going to be the mast cell. and macrophage cells. The macrophage will come. This is the macrophage. So the mast cell is going to release another type of chemicals. We'll call it the histamine. And the macrophage starts to do phagocytosis, but we are not there yet. So these are the histamine molecules. These are chemicals. And they have an effect like they increase the blood flow around the area, and they make the capillaries leaky. The important part of the leaky capillaries is that the white blood cells, the neutrophils, these are kind of green ones, they can go through the capillaries and they can get to the action site to do their phagocytosis, eating the damaged or cells or the pathogens. Also, the macrophage is doing the same stuff, eating the damaged cells as well as the pathogens. Also, the fifth one is the clotting factors in inflammation. The clotting factors localize the damage, remove the attackers, and they try to repair the wound. So these three of them, special cells, chemicals, and inflammatory response, they are the internal non-specific barriers. So let's focus on vertebrates. Not only have a non-specific immune system, but they have specific immune system. And the specific one, the adaptive acquired immunity, comes from when an antigen induced to the body. Antigen is antibody generating, comes from the word antibody generating. And they are special cells, special blood cells in the they are special blood cells. They are specific to the pathogen. They act a little bit slower, starting slower than non-specific, but very effective. They make a stronger immune response. They amplify the innate immunity too. And they remember, these cells remember the antigens by forming memory cells, and they are the lymphocytes that they are responsible for adaptive or acquired immunity, the T and the B cells. So these are what we said, these are the adaptive acquired immunity parts. Adaptive immunity. This is what we are going to focus on. Only vertebrates have that type of the acquired immunity. The acquired immunity divides up into two parts: the humoral immunity, the humoral immune response, as well as cell-mediated immune response. Different cells are responsible for the different type of responses. The humoral ones are the B cells that they are going to produce antibodies. And they are active if pathogens are going to be in the body fluids. Let's focus on the humoral immunity first. We have a couple of B cells. These are not beta cells. Beta cells are in the pancreas producing insulin. So these are B cells. These have different receptors for different antigens. This is different than those. The surface is totally covered with receptors, but I just draw two of them for each. And here comes the antigen, the pathogen, and the binding will happen with the special receptor, and this binding is going to cause, this is the cell signaling allosteric change in the receptor, and this allosteric change is going to induce a cascade mechanism, the transduction. This is kind of cell communication, cell signaling, so what we have covered before. And finally, in the cell, it's going to be a response. These B cells that they recognized the antigen, they are going to clone effector B cells. This is the response, the cloning. More and more effector B cells will happen that they are really targeting the specific antigen. More and more will form. Well, I just drew more receptors on the surface, but it really does not matter. These are the cloning ones, and they have the triangle-ish shape receptors. So what happens with these B cells, they can turn into plasma cells that they are going to produce antibodies. Antibodies are special proteins that they are important in the immune system. These are non-killing molecules. They are recognize the invaders and they facilitate elimination of those pathogens or non-self molecules or particles. How the antigen and antibody binding would help really the body is like neutralization. So the antigen antibody binding, it can neutralize the pathogen. The pathogen got those antibodies on its surface and becomes target for the phagocytes. The pathogens also will not be able to infect other cells. They cannot get into, for example, into another cell. They can do clumping, agglutination, that's a special name for it, the clumping and agglutination. Easy target for phagocytes again, and they clump the antigen carrying particles all together, so the phagocyte will just eat that big clump. And the third one is activation of the innate immune system, such as the complement system, the complement system will make a hole on the pathogen and the lysis will happen, so the pathogen will die, will leak out its content. The other type of cell that can form from the cloning effector B cells are the memory B cells. These are kind of the remembering cells that for the second attack, they can make faster the plasma cells that they will attack the intruder. And the first one, up till memory cells, this is the primary immune response, when the pathogen or the non-self will appear first, and the second one, like this, is happens at the second attack when the memory cell remembers for that invader and right away can form plasma cells very quickly, and the immunity will be stronger, so right away they can get the intruder out. So the second one is the cell-mediated immune response, that the T cells are responsible for it. It happens when the pathogen is inside of the body cell, like a virus, but also they can target to cancer cells. So the T cells, there are two types of T cells, the T helper cells, the lowercase h the uppercase h, the subscript means helper cell. They have receptors on their surfaces. The receptor and a self-protein. And here is the antigen-presenting cell, such as a phagocyte. The phagocyte ate the pathogen, but will put the antigen from the pathogen on its surface. So it just ate, but here's the receptor, and in the receptor puts a small part of the antigen that the phagocyte ate out. So it's antigen presenting cell. So the T helper will combine, will match, will interrogate the phagocytes, check what's going on, and this complex binding will activate the cell signaling, and transduction and response will happen. Cell communication. So binding will have an allosteric change in the T helper cell, transduction, the cascade mechanism, and the response will happen. The response, what is the response? Well, the T helper cell will start to clone effector T helper cells, more and more that type of a helper cell, as well as memory cells. T helper memory cells will form. The T helper cell also helps the B cells to initiate antigen production, as well as also triggers or helps the T cytotoxic cells. These are killer cells. These are the killers out of all of them what we talked about. And the killer cell, the cytotoxic, recognizes self and non-self receptors on the infected cells. It also going to do the binding with the infected cells. Allosteric change will take place, transduction will take place, and response. The response is the cell will release perforin, and this chemical is going to lyse the targeted cell, or the cell will go through apoptosis like the cancer cell. Now, the adaptive immunity or the acquired immunity, how can we obtain acquired immunity that is very specific for the antigen? By passive immunity, receiving pre-made antibodies is added into our bloodstream or in our body. It is temporary, but a great example is the mother milk and snake antivenom. When we get the antivenom against snake bites, we don't have time to make the body start to produce antibodies. And the active immunity, antigen enters the body produces antibodies through infection or vaccination. That's it.